Astro Go. Assalamualaikum dan selamat pagi. Anda bersama saya Nabilah Khalida dalam Niaga AWANI, di mana kita bawakan laporan berita terkini bisnes, kewangan serta ekonomi domestik dan juga antarabangsa. Esok 8 Mac 2025, satu dunia akan menyambut Hari Wanita Antarabangsa bagi meraihkan pencapaian luar biasa wanita di seluruh dunia dan memperjuangkan kesaksamaan jantina. Dan hari tersebut bukan sekadar perayaan tetapi juga satu panggilan untuk bertindak memastikan setiap wanita dan kanak-kanak perempuan mendapat peluang yang sama dalam semua aspek kehidupan. Jadi bersempena dengan hari yang istimewa ini, kita akan meneliti laporan terkini dari Jabatan Perangkaan Malaysia DOSA mengenai pemerkasaan wanita dalam pelbagai domen di negara kita. Baik, saya akan tunjukkan apa yang telah disediakan oleh Jabatan Perangkaan Malaysia DOSA untuk setakat tahun 2024. Baik, sebelum saya mulakan, untuk saya terangkan kepada anda, kalau kita nak tahu 100% nilai peratusan itu bermakna nilai ataupun kesaksamaan antara wanita dan juga lelaki adalah sama, dan untuk kita samakan dengan skor adalah sama dengan 1.0. Jadi untuk indeks jurang gender Malaysia MGGI, Malaysia Gender Gap Index 2023 adalah sebanyak 0.705 skor ataupun sebanyak 70.5%, dan ini kita dapat nilai dari 11 sub-index, dan sub-index yang pertama adalah peluang dan penyertaan ekonomi dan skornya adalah sebanyak 69.8%, dan ini kita bahagikan ataupun kita nilaikan dalam 4 cabang, iaitu kalau kita mulakan dengan kadar penyertaan tenaga buruh KPTB. Kalau kita lihat di sini, penyertaan wanita adalah lebih rendah berbanding lelaki, iaitu sebanyak 56.2%, manakala lelaki adalah seramai 82.3%, dan ini telah berlaku sejak dahulu lagi. Jaranglah, tak pernah lagi lah kita lihat penyertaan wanita itu lebih wanita itu lebih banyak daripada berbanding lelaki, dan itu berkenaan dengan kadar penyertaan KPTB. Dan kalau kita lihat untuk anggaran pendapatan diperoleh bagi setiap RM100 gaji dan upah diterima lelaki, wanita menerima lebih rendah iaitu sebanyak RM93.80. Dan kalau untuk pendapatan tahunan secara keseluruhan, wanita menerima sebanyak RM39,736 manakala lelaki menerima RM42,383. Dan ini antara jurang yang dapat kita lihat antara lelaki dan perempuan. Dan seterusnya adalah berkenaan dengan pengubal undang-undang, pegawai kanan dan juga pengurus. 1/4 daripada jumlah pengubal undang-undang, pegawai kanan dan juga pengurus adalah wanita. Jadi wanita secara peratusannya adalah lebih rendah berbanding lelaki sebanyak 25.4%, manakala lelaki 74.6%. Dan yang terakhir untuk penyertaan dalam sektor ekonomi adalah profesional dan juga pekerjaan teknikal. Peratus wanita sebagai profesional dan pekerja teknikal adalah lebih rendah berbanding lelaki dengan nilai peratusannya adalah sebanyak 40.2%, manakala lelaki adalah seramai 59.8%. Itu adalah peluang dan penyertaan ekonomi. Untuk subindeks kedua adalah pencapaian pendidikan dan skornya adalah 1.71 atau bersamaan dengan 107.1%. Ini kita dapat saksikan kesetaraan janda antara wanita dan lelaki itu hampir sama. Kalau kita dapat lihat di sini, wanita peratusannya adalah sebanyak 97.4%, manakala lelaki kurang 0.1% iaitu seramai lebih 97.5%. Dan perbezaan kadar literasi lelaki dan wanita adalah 0.1% kalau kita dapat lihat di sini. Dan ini telah berlaku selama sedekad lalu, di mana kita dapat saksikan wanita itu melebihi lelaki, tapi memasuki pada tahun 2024 kita dapat saksikan lelaki juga turut menyumbang lebih banyak dalam sektor pencapaian dan juga pendidikan ini dan menjadikan skornya melebihi 100%. Baik, kalau kita bahagikan untuk subindeks pencapaian pendidikan ni dalam 3 peringkat, kita ada peringkat rendah, peringkat menengah dan juga peringkat tertiary. Kalau untuk peringkat rendah, wanita mendahului dengan sebanyak 99.5%, manakala lelaki adalah 98%. Dan untuk peringkat menengah, wanita juga mendahului sebanyak 94.9%, manakala lelaki 92.4%. Sama juga untuk peringkat tertiary, wanita melebihi separuh 50.7%. Dan lelaki adalah 33.8%. Kadar enrolment kasa wanita dalam semua peringkat adalah lebih tinggi berbanding lelaki lah, secara orang kata ringkasannya kalau boleh saya kongsikan di sini. Untuk subindeks yang ketiga adalah, kalau boleh saya tunjukkan, adalah kesihatan dan kehidupan, dan skornya adalah sebanyak 0.956. Kalau peratusannya adalah 95.6%. Kalau saya nak tunjukkan di sini, nisbah jantina ketika lahir adalah 931 bayi perempuan dilahirkan bagi setiap 1000 bayi lelaki. Ini bermakna bayi lelaki itu lebih ramai lahir berbanding bayi perempuan. Namun kalau jangkaan hayat ketika lahir, perempuan adalah pada umur boleh mencapai tahap umur 76.6 tahun, manakala lelaki hanyalah 71.8 tahun. Dan ini bermakna perempuan dijangka boleh hidup 48 tahun lebih lama berbanding lelaki. Jadi lebih ramai lelaki dilahirkan, tapi jangka hayat perempuan itu lebih lama tahunnya. Dan untuk subindeks seterusnya adalah berkenaan dengan penguasaan politik, di mana skornya adalah 0.096. Sangat rendah sebenarnya kalau kita samakan dengan lebih kurang peratusannya agak rendah kalau kita nak bandingkan dengan 100% itu, di mana wanita di parlimen adalah sebanyak 13.5% sahaja ahli parlimen adalah wanita, dan wanita dalam jawatan menteri hanyalah 16.1%, lebih rendah berbanding lelaki pada tahun 2023. Dan ini mungkin akan kita bincangkan dari semasa ke semasa bersama pakar. Dan penduduk wanita mengikut kumpulan umur, pada kumpulan umur untuk kosong, kita boleh kata bayilah bayi ke kanak-kanak 0 hinggalah 14 tahun adalah seramai 3.7 juta orang, dan peratusannya adalah seramai 23.0%. Manakala untuk kategori umur 15 belia sehinggalah 64 tahun adalah seramai 11 juta, dan nilai peratusannya adalah 68.9%. Manakala untuk warga emas 65 tahun ke atas, nilainya adalah bilangannya adalah 1.3 juta, peratusannya adalah 8.1%. Ini adalah bilangan wanita wanita di Malaysia untuk setakat tahun 2023. Kalau kita boleh tunjukkan juga berkenaan dengan kelahiran hidup, kita ada 219,780 bayi perempuan daripada 455,761 jumlah kelahiran hidup untuk tahun 2023. Ini adalah kelahiran hidup bayi, manakala kadar kesuburan jumlah adalah 1.7 anak dilahirkan bagi setiap wanita dalam tempoh reproduktif, dan tempoh reproduktif ini adalah lebih kurang 15 hingga 49 tahun untuk wanita, dan itu adalah untuk kadar kesuburan. Ini adalah jumlahnya untuk tahun 2023. Namun kita ada data terbaru, sebelum ini kita pernah lagi bawa berkenaan dengan keganasan terhadap wanita. Kalau kita dapat lihat di sini, 46.3% daripada 9,283 kes keganasan terhadap wanita dilaporkan pada tahun 2023 adalah keganasan rumah tangga. Belum capai tahap separuh, namun juga perlu kita ambil cakna dan bagaimana untuk kita kurangkan jumlah ini pada tahun-tahun akan datang. Kerana 9,283 ini adalah wanita-wanita juga seorang manusia yang melalui hari-hari yang mempunyai cabaran dalam isu-isu semasa dan juga ekonomi juga. Jadi kita akan bersama dengan pakar juga untuk membincangkan tentang perkara ini. Dan yang terakhir adalah purata gaji dan upah bulanan. Kalau kita lihat, puratanya adalah sebanyak RM3,311 sebulan, manakala jumlahnya adalah sebanyak 3,441 untuk purata gaji dan upah bulanan untuk 2023. Kalau kita boleh tunjukkan di sini. Baik, tambahan berkenaan dengan subindeks ini adalah nisbah tanggungan wanita adalah sebanyak jumlah 45.1. Nisbah tanggungan umur muda adalah 33.4, manakala nisbah tanggungan umur tua adalah sebanyak ataupun seramai 11.7. Namun kalau kematian, 84,672 kematian wanita daripada keseluruhan total 196,965 jumlah kematian. Dan 5 sebab utama kematian adalah ini adalah antara 5 penyakit utamanya, iaitu pneumonia, heart disease, penyakit hati, malignant aneurysm of breast, dan juga diabetes dan juga kanser buah dada lah. Dan itu adalah antara 5 top 5 penyakit yang menyebabkan punca kematian untuk golongan wanita. Dan itu adalah antara sedikit sebanyak data berkenaan wanita dalam pelbagai aspek setakat tahun 2024, dan statistik ini menunjukkan bahawa walaupun banyak kemajuan dan kejayaan yang telah kita capai, masih terdapat jurang yang perlu dirapatkan, terutamanya dalam bidang ekonomi dan juga politik. Namun dengan semangat Hari Wanita Sedunia ini, harapnya kita dapat sama-sama membawa perubahan positif dalam komuniti, kerana setiap langkah kecil menuju kesesamaan adalah satu kemenangan besar. Baik, untuk seterusnya kita akan membincangkan beberapa isu utama dari keputusan BNM mengekalkan OPR pada kadar 3% dan kestabilan inflasi di bawah 2%. Dan meskipun cabaran harga komoditi dan subsidi RON 95 hinggalah kepada kesan dasar perdagangan Amerika Syarikat dan juga unjuran nilai ringgit dalam 6 ke 9 bulan akan datang. Jadi untuk berbincang lanjut, kita akan bersama dengan Abdul Muiz Murhalim, pakar ekonomi MIDF Research. Assalamualaikum Muiz. Mungkin pertama sekali kita akan mulakan dengan melihat keputusan yang dibuat oleh BNM semalam. Pada pendapat Muiz, adakah keputusan BNM mengekalkan OPR pada kadar 3% ini lebih menjurus kepada mengawal inflasi atau memastikan sokongan berterusan kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi negara?
Waalaikumsalam. Kalau kita lihat dari segi keputusan yang dibuat oleh Bank Negara semalam, ianya menepati jangkaan kebanyakan pemerhati pasaran termasuk juga kami di MIDF Research. Kerana kita tidak menjangka perlunya OPR itu dinaikkan ataupun diturunkan. Melihat kepada tekanan inflasi yang masih terkawal dan juga seperti yang dinyatakan BNM, paras sedia ada masih dikira akomodatif ataupun terus menyokong pertumbuhan ekonomi negara. Satu sudut bila kita lihat dari segi pergerakan ataupun tahap OPR itu, ianya tidaklah ketat ataupun kita boleh kata neutral. Jadi ini menunjukkan tiada keperluan untuk meningkatkan OPR kerana kedudukan inflasi dilihat nampak terus dekat stabil. Dan menurut Bank Negara, keadaan inflasi yang dikira agak rendah ini disebabkan kurangnya tekanan harga yang berpunca daripada tekanan kos pengeluaran. dan pada masa sama tiada tekanan permintaan yang kuat ke atas pergerakan harga dalam negara secara umumnya. Dan dari segi pertumbuhan ekonomi, bila kita lihat prestasi KDNK negara yang terus berkembang, walaupun sedikit sederhana pada paras 5% berbanding 5.4% pada suku sebelumnya, prestasi pada suku akhir tahun lalu ini terus menunjukkan prestasi pertumbuhan ekonomi berada pada paras yang sangat kuat dan memberangsangkan. Jadi ini menggambarkan tiada kekangan yang kuat daripada kedudukan OPR sekarang, dan ianya terus memberi sokongan yang baik kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi negara. Jadi pengekalan OPR ini menunjukkan dari segi penetapan kadar moneteri adalah masih berada pada paras yang bersesuaian melihat kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi yang positif selain daripada pertumbuhan pinjaman dan kredit yang juga masih terus meningkat.
Baik, seperti yang Muiz katakan, melihat kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi yang orang kata positif, nilai ataupun pengekalan kadar OPR itu adalah wajar. Jadi kalau kita sebut tentang inflasi pula, walaupun ianya terkawal dan stabil di bawah paras 2% setakat bulan Januari tahun ini, bagaimana Muiz melihat pergerakan harga komoditi global ketika ini dan jangkaan perubahan dasar dalam Malaysia sendiri seperti rasionalisasi subsidi bagi petrol RON 95 dan mungkin adakah ia memberi kesan kepada inflasi di Malaysia? Apa pendapat Muiz tentang perkara ini?
Secara umumnya kita menjangkakan kadar inflasi mungkin akan lebih tinggi daripada 1.8% tahun lalu, mungkin akan meningkat ke sekitar 2.8% tahun ini. Punca utama adalah lebih disebabkan perubahan yang mungkin berlaku dari segi faktor-faktor dari sudut penawaran ataupun supply side, yang mana ini melibatkan tekanan harga yang mungkin berlaku dari segi peningkatan kos pengeluaran yang dijangka akan terus meningkat. Dari satu sudut, bila kita lihat dalam keadaan ekonomi tempatan, kemungkinan perubahan polisi atau dasar yang bakal dibuat oleh kerajaan, contohnya melibatkan penyesaran subsidi minyak yang akan menyebabkan harga petrol RON 95 mungkin akan dinaikkan. Selain itu, syarikat dalam negara juga berdepan tekanan daripada kenaikan kos seperti kos pekerja melibatkan contohnya kenaikan gaji minima, termasuk juga jangkaan kenaikan kadar elektrik dan juga sumbangan KWSP bagi pekerja asing. Kalau kita lihat dari sudut pergerakan nilai ringgit dan harga komoditi pula, ianya tidaklah begitu membimbangkan kerana paras pergerakan ringgit nampaknya stabil dan penurunan harga minyak mentah contohnya yang bergerak ke paras bawah daripada $70 setong baru-baru ini mengurangkan tekanan dari segi kos pengeluaran berkaitan pengangkutan dan juga tenaga. Pada masa sama, harga minyak sawit juga agak stabil, berada sekitar RM4,500 setan, dan ini terus sama pada pagi saya akan mengurangkan tekanan harga melibatkan pergerakan harga komoditi. Cuma perhatian yang lebih sekarang ini pada saya tertumpu kepada bagaimana kesan kenaikan tarif import yang dibuat oleh Amerika Syarikat dan juga negara lain mungkin akan memberi kesan kepada kos pengeluaran di peringkat global. Namun dari sudut lain, lebihan pengeluaran akibat permintaan yang mungkin akan terkesan dengan kenaikan kos import ini bersama mungkin akan mengekang kenaikan harga secara umumnya. Jadi kita masih perlu melihat bagaimana perubahan dasar-dasar perdagangan yang dibuat oleh negara-negara lain mungkin akan memberi kesan kepada suasana tekanan harga pada bulan-bulan akan datang.
Baik, itu berkenaan dengan jangkaan inflasi yang dijangka mungkin akan meningkat kepada 2.8%. Tapi apa pula jangkaan Muiz mengenai kesan perubahan dasar perdagangan Amerika Syarikat? Adakah tarif import ke atas China, Kanada dan Mexico yang telah dinaikkan contohnya akan memberi kesan negatif kepada perdagangan luar Malaysia untuk tahun ini?
Secara kasar kalau kita lihat kemungkinan penurunan 10% ekspor ke Amerika Syarikat mungkin boleh menjejas pertumbuhan ekonomi negara sekitar 1 ke 1.3%. Ini berikutan saiz ekspor yang dihantar ke Amerika Syarikat pada tahun lalu. Namun sekiranya pengeluaran turut sama menyebabkan penurunan dari segi import pada barang-barang bahan mentah, barang input dan juga barangan separa siap, penurunan import ini terus sama akan mengurangkan kesan negatif daripada kejatuhan ekspor ke atas pertumbuhan ekonomi negara. Saya suka untuk mengimbau kembali pengalaman ekonomi negara pada tahun 2023 yang mana ekspor negara menguncup sebanyak 8%. Pada masa sama, import terus sama menurun sekitar 6.4%. Namun ekonomi Malaysia mampu mencapai pertumbuhan sekitar 3.6% pada tahun tersebut, disokong oleh pertumbuhan domestik yang masih dikira, saya lihat masih terus kekal positif, dan saya percaya fundamental ini masih akan mampu terus menyokong pertumbuhan ekonomi negara pada tahun ini kerana melihat kepada keadaan pasaran buruh yang terus kekal baik. Pada masa sama, kadar penyertaan buruh dalam ekonomi negara terus meningkat ke paras yang tinggi sekitar 70.5%. Ini menggambarkan lebih ramai orang digajikan dengan jumlah pengguna yang lebih besar. Saya percaya dari segi aktiviti pembelanjaan swasta insya-Allah akan berjaya, akan terus meningkat dan menjadi pemacu utama kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi negara di masa akan datang.
Muiz, beberapa hari lepas data PMI sektor perkilangan Malaysia yang diterbitkan S&P Global ada menunjukkan perkembangan yang lebih memberangsangkan kerana indeks tersebut menaik kepada 49.7 bagi bulan Februari tahun ini berbanding dengan 48.7 pada bulan sebelumnya. Jadi, adakah ini menandakan Malaysia mampu mendepani ketidaktentuan yang boleh menjejaskan perdagangan luar yang kita bincang tadi, Muiz?
Kalau kita lihat dari segi pergerakan ini, satu sudut ianya adalah tanda yang baik kerana terdapat peningkatan dari segi aktiviti dalam sektor perkilangan, khususnya bila kita dapati jumlah pesanan baru itu adalah lebih tinggi. Namun kita dapati juga syarikat-syarikat sebenarnya telah mula membuat sedikit perubahan melibatkan pengurusan jumlah pengajian dan termasuk juga jumlah pembelian barangan kerana melihat kepada kebimbangan kemungkinan permintaan yang lebih perlahan. Pada masa yang sama, bagi saya laporan PMI ini turut memberi satu gambaran positif melihat kepada tekanan inflasi bagi kos pengeluaran yang tidak jauh berubah, dan ini menyebabkan berdasarkan laporan tersebut tekanan harga yang rendah dapat dikekalkan. Dan apa yang lebih memberangsangkan pada saya setakat ini, walaupun kita mungkin lebih bimbang daripada segi kesan perang dagangan antara US dan negara-negara lain, tapi kita lihat laporan PMI ini menunjukkan keyakinan di kalangan pengeluar tempatan terus meningkat kerana terdapat jangkaan jumlah pesanan mungkin akan terus kekal mampan dan juga mungkin akan terus meningkat. Jadi mungkin melihat kepada data PMI yang lebih baik ini mungkin terlalu awal untuk kita katakan bahawa kelemahan perdagangan luar ni akan memberi kesan buruk kepada aktiviti perniagaan dan pengeluaran dalam negara.
Baik, kita ada berbakikan lebih kurang 2 minit, Muiz. Mungkin kalau Muiz boleh kongsikan apakah data atau signal yang perlu kita beri perhatian bagi menilai sama ada ekonomi negara akan turut sama terjejas dengan permintaan akhir ataupun final demand yang lebih perlahan daripada Amerika Syarikat dan negara-negara lain, dan dalam situasi tersebut adakah OPR mungkin akan diturunkan pada masa akan datang? Silakan, Muiz. Muiz. Baik, kita ada masalah teknikal dan kita akan akhirkan sesi bersama dengan Abdul Muiz Murahalim, pakar ekonomi MIDF Research, dan terima kasih diucapkan kepada beliau atas perkongsian itu tadi, dan kita akan teruskan dengan perkembangan antarabangsa seterusnya. Baik, the European Central Bank cut interest rates as expected on Thursday and kept the door ajar to more, even as a looming trade war with the US and plans to boost a military spending drive Europe's biggest economic policy upheaval in decades. Easing for the 6th time since June, the ECB lowered its deposit rate to 2.5% in a nod to slowing inflation and faltering growth, and said that rates were still restricting growth, even if less so than in the past.
We have huge uncertainty. Some people have used the adjective phenomenal uncertainty, and we debated as to whether it was high and rising, but suffice to say that it is all over. So we have risks all over, uncertainty all over. We know that tariffs, and particularly if there is retaliation, are not good at all and are net negative on pretty much all accounts. But that's my personal view. Although I think we around the table of the Governing Council, we all agreed that it was net negative when it happens, and it's even negative before it happens, because the uncertainty that is generated and the undermined confidence that results from just the threat of those those tariff increases and potential retaliations are putting a brake on investment, on consumption decisions, on employment, hiring, and all the rest of it.
That wording suggests that more rate cuts may be coming, as bank has long declared that restriction is no longer necessary, while inflation at 2.4% last month is safely heading back to its 2% target this year. The ECB lowered its 2025 economic growth forecast for the fourth straight time on Thursday, putting expansion in 2025 at just 0.9, only slightly above the 0.7% pace recorded last year. Inflation was meanwhile seen at 2.3% this year, above the 2.1% seen 3 months ago. President Donald Trump on Thursday exempted goods from both Canada and Mexico under a North American trade pact for a month from the 25% tariffs that he had imposed earlier this week, the latest twist in fast-shifting trade policy that has whipsawed financial markets and business leaders. The exemption, which will expire on April 2nd, covers both of the two largest U.S. trading partners. Trump had earlier only mentioned an exemption for Mexico, but the amendment he signed to his order for 25% levies on imports from both, which went into effect on Tuesday, covers Canada as well. For Canada, the amended order also excludes duties on potash, a critical fertilizer for U.S. farmers, but does not fully cover energy products on which Trump has imposed a separate 10% levy. A White House official said that is because not all energy products imported from Canada are covered under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement on Trade that Trump negotiated in his first term as president.
This USMCA exemption that you're essentially announcing today for this 1 month.
It's just a modification, short term, because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
Would you consider the same sort of exemption or pause for the auto tariffs you're talking about next month?
We're not looking at that, no.
No,
we're not looking at that, no.
Trump imposed the tariffs after declaring a national emergency due to deaths from fentanyl overdoses, asserting that the deadly opioid and its precursor chemicals make their way from China to the U.S. via Canada and Mexico. Trump has also imposed tariffs of 20% on all imports from China as a result. The exemptions will expire on April 2nd, when Trump has threatened to impose a global regime of reciprocal tariffs on all U.S. trading partners. Wall Street stocks finished lower on Thursday, with the Nasdaq confirming it has been in a correction since December, weighed down by market jitters over the current uncertainty surrounding U.S. trade policy. President Donald Trump announced on Thursday that goods from Canada and Mexico, covered by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement USMCA, will be exempted for a month from the 25% tariffs imposed earlier this week. The development comes a day after Trump exempted automotive goods from the tariffs.
Really what you're seeing, I think, is the market reacting negatively to a lot of volatility in terms of policy outcomes. So not that we're in a bad place right now economically, it's just the range of outcomes in the short term is starting to widen to a point where investors are uncomfortable, and we're starting to see a decidedly risk-off trade in markets today. So people coming out of assets that have done very well over the last couple of years, looking for probably less risk or better valuations, however you want to phrase that.
Trump had earlier only mentioned an exemption for Mexico, but later signed an amendment to his order that now covers Canada as well. The S&P 500 lost 104.15 points, or 1.78%, to end at 5,738.48 points, while the Nasdaq Composite lost 483.48 points, or 2.61%, to 18,069.26. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 427.51 points, or 0.99%, to 42,579.08. All right, we have more updates after this with my colleague Tehmina Kaoosji on Niaga Spotlight. We'll be right back.
Nak coklat? Hari ni tak boleh. Nanti saya kena dengan mak saya. Pepsodent baharu disahkan halal. Mikrokalsium aktif dan Pro-Florida Complex membantu memperbaiki lubang halus akibat makanan manis sebelum menjadi kaviti untuk pelindungan maksimum. Pepsodent.
5 lelaki penghantar makanan didakwa di Mahkamah Majistret Bangi atas tuduhan membunuh seorang pemandu kereta lelaki dalam satu kejadian.
4 sungai di sekitar kawasan perindustrian Pasir Gudang di Johor termasuk Sungai Kim Kim didapati tercemar dan berada pada tahap yang membimbangkan. Kerajaan sudah mulakan inisiatif untuk menggantikan kenderaan operasinya kepada kenderaan elektrik EV dalam skala kecil terlebih dahulu.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
From bridging the digital divide in rural areas to advancing next generation satellite technologies, MEASAT is at the forefront of Malaysia's satellite communications evolution. And at MWC 2025, MEASAT is showcasing its hybrid satellite connectivity, integrating geostationary GSO and low Earth orbit LEO satellites, and alongside ConnectMe broadband and Earth observation EO innovations. And joining me right now, Mr. Yao Cheong Lim, Chief Operating Officer of MEASAT Global Berhad. Thank you so much for being with Astro AWANI today.
Yeah.
And of course, first of all, what opportunities does MEASAT see at MWC 2025, and how will you showcase innovation strengthens Malaysia leadership in satellite communication?
So the purpose for us to come to MWC, I think there are a few key main objectives for us.
Yeah.
And first thing is that this is a good opportunity for us to look at all the new technology in this place. MWC is one of the largest telco event in the world.
Yeah.
So from here itself, we're going to look at what kind of a new technology solution that can we bring back into Malaysia to benefit our rakyat.
Yeah.
And the other objective is that here you can see that we have all our other colleagues from different from the telco. So it's kind of like showcase that we as a whole, apart from the telco, we have all the ingredients that require for the Malaysia to be like the digital hub in the Asian region. So that's our second objective. And of course, we also want to showcase our solution, as you mentioned, that we have a broadband solution, and later on probably we can talk a little bit about more apart from the digital connectivity, what else that we can do with the satellite.
Yeah, Mr. Yao, MEASAT plays a crucial role in connecting Malaysia's rural and underserved communities. How has the ConnectMe broadband initiative impacted digital inclusion, and also what are your future plans? Yeah.
So, MEASAT today itself, we still have about probably 3,000 to 4,000 sites, and in the whole Malaysia. So all this site itself, we provide a very good, connectivity, because connectivity is the fundamental of all these digital services.
Yeah.
Without the connectivity, all this application use case itself is not going to work. So we have set up all this, very good fundamental for those services, and we 2 years ago we rolled out this. We call it like work together with a partner called Parcel 365 to roll out the village digital in Malaysia. So that's whereby we introduced the e-commerce, and we also introduced the logistic services there. I think more importantly itself, we also have a program, we call it like PTU, Program Usahawan for the rural, for the villages itself. So we are of the view that instead of just providing funding that help to the villagers, I think it's more important that teach them how to come up with all this initiative itself that can more sustainable. Because if it just depends on the funding, that's not in the long run. So for example, we give them some all the used clothes itself, and we teach them how to make the floor mat, and from there itself you can sell it to the corporate, because corporate can take it as one of their CSR services. So that program itself has been ongoing for a while now. We see that a lot of traction there. And lately, we also work with a company, another partner. We call it Muda Health Tech. So we roll out these telehealth services in Malaysia. We have set up like a POC site in Ranau, Sabah. It is a very successful site. And in fact, we are also talking with the Ministry of Health to see how we can roll out in more sites. So we're targeting to roll another 100 sites itself this year. And the plan is that, to benefit 1 million rakyat, the rural area, the rakyat in Malaysia. So stay tuned for our next update on that. I think we are quite excited about that.
And of course, MEASAT is optimizing its satellite fleet and integrating low Earth orbit, LEO, and satellites with its geostationary satellites. How will this hybrid model enhance connectivity and services?
So we launched our MEASAT 3D in year 2022. So with the launch itself, we managed to push our broadband services from the 30 megabit per second. Now today we can reach up to like the 200 megabit per second. So this is actually as good as a fiber in many areas. So geostationary itself, it has its advantage. So in terms of the service reliability itself, definitely it is much better. And we also work closely with Starlink. We are one of the reseller in Malaysia. So we integrate the geostationary and the low orbit solution and provide like a integrated solution to our customer. So from a customer point of view, they get the best of the both worlds. So they get the speed from the Starlink as well as from MEASAT, but at the same time they also get the service reliability or service level agreement from the services itself. This is very important, especially to the enterprise customer, because they want to have that assurance that when no matter what, your service need to be stay up. So we work very well, with this hybrid model. And recently, you probably also heard about that. We also signed an MOU with a Chinese company called Space Sail. So they are also in the low Earth orbit satellite. So we want to see that rather than we are open. So from us, the important thing is that how to provide more robust services, stay more competitive, such that it benefit to our customer.
Or maybe you can like a bit deeper on your collaboration with Space Sail. Maybe like what technological breakthrough that maybe like people can expect from.
So I think with the Space Sail, maybe I can just do a comparison. With Starlink itself, we are just a reseller of the services. Whereas with Space Sails, so apart from just the reselling, so we are also providing them with the gateway services. So they set up the gateway in Malaysia at our teleport. We help them to run the service from our teleport. And from the technology side itself, we are also working together to look at different spectrum and frequency, such that we can make the services more robust, higher speed, things like that.
You mentioned exploring new capabilities like Earth observation, EO, and satellite-based IoT and direct-to-device communication. What potential applications do you foresee for Malaysia and the region?
So apart from the communication part of it, like broadband services, broadcasting. So we are also start to look at the adjacent industry in our satellite world. So Earth observation, or sometimes we call it remote sensing. And this is also one of the area that is getting very attract a lot of attention. So with the remote sensing Earth observation satellite, we can provide a lot of imagery services to our customer. You can use it for for example, the agriculture, the oil and gas, the gas emission monitoring, which is very important today, for the ESG reporting. In regards to the D2D, I think at this stage is still at the I would say it's the early stage. I mean, from the worldwide itself, the services is at the moment is still limited to some emergency call, SMS. It's not really go down to the broadband services that people expected. But nevertheless, we work closely with our partner, and together we see how we can, bring it to the next phase, such that using our normal the normal mobile phone itself, we can communicate with satellite and get the broadband services.
Amazing. Lastly, maybe like key takeaways, more collaboration, more networking here, and of course benefiting the rakyat at the end. So what key takeaways that MEASAT looking for from MWC?
So our key takeaway here is that, as I say, this is the world, one of the world's largest event, especially on the connectivity. So we hope that we can look at the technology or the solution that can benefit our rakyat. We bring it back. Not all solutions suitable for the country. So we are the one that help our service provider or customer the filtering through what is the best for the country. And again, we are very supportive with what the MCMC and the Kementerian is doing. So as a nation as a whole, we want to showcase that what Malaysia can deliver to the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Yao Chong Lim, Chief Operating Officer of MEASAT Global Berhad. And thank you for watching this special show of Niaga AWANI in conjunction with Mobile World Congress 2025, brought to you by MCMC. Thank you. See you again. I'm Harits Asyraf Hasnan. See you.
Malaysia sebenarnya berada di kedudukan kedua terburuk di dunia berkaitan keseimbangan hidup dan kerja.
LRT3 sudah akan mula beroperasi suku ketiga 2025. Kerja-kerja fizikal dan penstrukturan sudah mencecah 95%.
KPM sebenarnya sedang memperincikan cadangan untuk menyediakan allowance kos sara hidup tingkatan 6.
Melibat urus antara umat Islam dan agama lain penting supaya dapat mengelakkan ataupun membawa kepada Islamofobia.
Please sayang, jangan tinggalkan saya.
Tiada perempuan lain.
Mahligai gagal dibina.
Macam mana aku boleh ada kat sini? Adik dah bangun. Nama adik siapa? Ni ke Abang Syukri.
Cinta yang saling melengkapi.
Ingatan abang makin hari makin merosot.
Abang nikmat terbesar padamu.
Kini mula dicemburui. 1000 tahun, Rabu dan Kamis, 9 malam. Di Astro Ria dan Astro Go.
Welcome back to the special show of Niaga AWANI in conjunction with Mobile World Congress 2025 here in Barcelona, brought to you by Malaysia MCMC in Malaysia Pavilion right now. And at MWC 2025, Malaysia's telecommunications and digital leaders are taking center stage and showcasing cutting-edge innovation that drives smart cities, education and nationwide connectivity. As one of Malaysia's leading telecom players, Maxis is at the forefront of 5G advanced technology, AI-driven learning and bridging the digital divide. And joining me right now is Mr. Abdul Karim Fakir, Chief Technology and Strategy Officer of Maxis. Mr. Abdul Karim, thank you so much for being with Astro AWANI today. First of all, what strategic opportunities does Maxis aim to unlock at MWC, and how will your showcase innovations position Malaysia as a leader in digital transformation?
Thank you, Harits, for having me. First and foremost, on behalf of Maxis, we are happy to participate in the Mobile World Congress again, and likewise in the past. I think for this specific year, that being Maxis as a leading service provider, integrated leading service provider in Malaysia, we wish to demonstrate our capability in delivering to the customer from the perspective of 5G advance, and as well as showcasing of the artificial intelligence use cases, and of course, last but not least, the way how we then serve the members, the customer out there.
Yeah. With smart cities becoming a key focus, how is Maxis leveraging 5G advance, and especially to enable real-time urban solutions? And maybe you can share with us what pilot projects have shown promising results.
Thank you very much for that. That's very interesting. As a matter of fact, we have demonstrated our capability in rolling out 5G services since last year, when we showcased the 5G advance in KL City, and as well as subsequently in Labuan Island.
Okay.
So we have demonstrated the capability of 5G advanced in terms of use cases from the perspective of the advanced smart city infrastructure, and as well as look into to improve the efficiency of municipal council, and last but not least, of course, to improve the security of members of the public with the capabilities.
And one of interesting things and also initiative that I look for is E-Class Gen AI. And Maxis redefining education itself. How does AI personalize learning from students and teachers, and of course, and what measurable impact has this initiative had so far?
Yeah, the E-Class is our flagship CSL project. Started in 2016. For now, we have covered about 4,100 schools, and we have students that registered like with the portal, almost 90,000. And of course, it is a free after-school learning that what we offered, and providing the content that which is pretty much aligned in the with the Ministry of Education in Malaysia, and specifically for the AI, Gen AI. We do not want to leave out the student readiness, so we are conducting classes for them to get themselves prepared and ready, and of course excited, and to increase the interest for them with the generative AI.
Yeah. One of other thing is about NADI collaboration with MCMC on NADI initiative. How does this collaboration help bridge, especially digital divide, and what are the next steps in expanding connectivity for business and communities?
Yeah, we are excited in Maxis to participate and to help the government of Malaysia to expand the NADI footprints in the country. And of course, for all over the Malaysia, that what we are building in order to improve the digital divide in the way like providing the internet connectivity to students, and of course, it's also open for the members of the community within the specific Adun area.
All right, and maybe lastly, key takeaways, Maxis here in MWC. Maybe more collaborations, more networking, and maybe like especially broader digital economic transformation that will be brought by Maxis to us Malaysian.
Yeah, MWC is a key, we would say, like an area, an arena for people to engage with the technology innovator, and as well as a potential for us to also team up with the partners in realizing and supporting our business plan to the larger segment, and as well as to introduce capabilities, and as well as the power of 5G advanced especially, and as well as the artificial intelligence.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Abdul Karim Fakir, Chief Technology and Strategy Officer of Maxis, for your thoughts and ideas, and of course, more collaborations, more networking, and a lot more I'm going to share throughout this 4-day event, throughout the MWC 2025 here in Barcelona. Thank you for watching. I'm Harits Asyraf. See you next time.
Ish, line kat kampung ni asyik tersekat-sekat je. Dahlah driver lembab.
Kita kena tengok persekitaran kita. Kena pastikan semuanya berada dalam keadaan yang betul.
Cepatlah!
Ya, Jumeirah.
Internet pun sama lembab. Tak apa. I akan kencangkan rumah ni.
Memang favourite aku. Macam gini.
Stream Dia Imamku. Bila-bila masa, apa jua cara. Sehingga 4 peranti mudah.
Gempur di Awani 7.45.
Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. Niaga Spotlight takes us through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now, this week on Future Affairs, we will be discussing optimizing workplace well-being. In Malaysia, work-life balance remains a significant concern. A 2024 study ranked Malaysia as indeed the second worst country for work-life balance amongst 60 high GDP nations, with an average work week of 40.8 hours. Now, additionally, employees often work beyond the standard 48-hour week. In the banking sector, the average is around 52 hours. Now, this overwork contributes to burnout, absenteeism, as employees adjust their schedules to compensate. However, 9-to-5 workplace standards are also evolving very quickly, driven by technological advancements, shifting workplace cultures, changing demographics, and economic strategies. These shifts are further amplified by the impact of AI, the recent pandemic, the evolving expectations of the workforce. Now, around 60.3% of Malaysian employees that were surveyed prioritize work-life balance, which is highlighting increasing calls for change. The newly launched Malaysia Wellbeing at Work Index report provides crucial insights into workplace well-being trends across industries in Malaysia. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of Heital Doshi, organizational psychologist, CEO of OSIG and founder of the Wellbeing at Work movement, joining me in the studios, joined by Dr. Kenneth Kafaki, professor at Sunway University and academic fellow, and they are going to be right here in the studios for a very timely discussion on optimizing workplace well-being. A very good morning to the both of you. How are we doing?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us.
Fantastic.
Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So a really timely discussion, Heital, as well as Dr. Kenny. I would actually like to, before we dive deeper into the findings, let's set the stage. Heital, perhaps you'd be the best to tell us a little bit more about how did this entire Wellbeing at Work Index originate? What was your thought process behind this, given your strong background in industrial and organizational psychology?
Right. So as an organizational psychologist, we really look at the workplace like athletic workforce. So you're trying to score a goal
right.
in the shortest period of time. And we were very, very lucky. In 2017, I encountered a Tan Sri Wanzo from Petronas, who was the ex-president of Petronas, and he had asked me this question in our engagement. He said, Heital, I've got a workforce of 47,000 people. How do I maximize their potential, especially during challenging times? And as we see the world getting more and more challenging. And so that question actually started my, the power of one fantastic question can take you another 7 to 10 years to figure out how to answer that question. And so we started wondering, we hire people in the workplace. We want them to maximize their potential so that we can achieve the outcomes that we want. So that thought process was actually what led to the Wellbeing at Work Index that we've designed.
Right.
In trying to maximize potential, what are the risks that people experience? How well are they coping? And how safe do they feel to have the right conversation at the right time with the right person to get to the right outcome? So that was really the birth of how the Wellbeing at Work Index came about.
And it's very interesting because you mentioned timeline-wise, so that was 2017. Almost a decade on, smack in the middle of, almost 2025. Here we are. So much has changed. Arguably, enough has happened in this almost decade, which did not even occur in the world of work over the past 50 to 80 years, right?
Yeah.
Things have really changed. So who actually commissioned this workplace well-being report and study, and you have launched it. This is of course not its first edition, but why are you so optimistic and interested about the findings which have come out of the most latest one?
Right. I think who commissioned this was frustration and anger.
All right.
Yeah, I think the anger and frustration of when we talk about mental health, it's always about mental illness, depression, anxiety, stress. But that's not what mental health really is about. The goal of it is really to be at the optimum state. And so we thought that the way it was being measured was not right. It is definitely the right time to be measuring things correctly for the benefit and the well-being of organizations and individuals as well. So that's, I think, where we are at right now. And we don't remain optimistic about the data, unfortunately, because year on year it's declining. But we do remain optimistic with the idea that when people get access to their own data and they are accountable to champion a better work life for themselves, it can lead to much better outcomes. So I think where we remain optimistic is in typically the awareness of what this data means for
for people. Yeah, exactly. And of course, we're talking about the C-suite level, organizational champions and corporate leaders, right? So shifting from there into Kenny, Dr. Kenny, tell me a little bit about the fact that we're looking at, of course, a lot of statistical data which has been collated, but it isn't just about the statistical dip. Echoing what Hazel had mentioned earlier, this is really about struggles that are faced by employees around Malaysian workplaces, day on day, year on year. Let's dig into that.
Yeah, when we take a look at the data and it's reducing on all our variables, it's either the same or it's reducing year on year. I would not say we're at the point yet that we're in an absolute crisis, but it is deeply concerning. Everything is dropping. Our vulnerable groups, you know, females, younger employees, people with less tenure, people with lower job levels. Year on year, it's increasingly getting worse for them. Compared to their exact counterparts, who it's getting better year on year. It's almost like a seesaw effect. And that is concerning. As we get more data in the years to come, we'll be able to bridge the gap a lot more with this. But we were looking at this data and we were looking at the kind of the polar opposite. It was almost like a dichotomy happening between the various groups versus the more vulnerable groups. And what we found, we started talking about, you know, we've had all of these terms in the last number of years, great resignation, the great burnout, etc.
Sure, all these things that come in the pop culture, everybody's buzzing about it.
Exactly. And then there was some sort of terminology which actually describes what's actually happening in Malaysia. And we almost simultaneously came up with the term the great disillusion. The people at work, particularly from the groups that we're talking about, they don't see work as work anymore. It's almost like that there has been misservice, that their aspirations, etc. And we're not saying that they're being crushed, that they're being severely dented. And these expectations, they're coming back to these individuals, they're basically asking questions in relation to should I continue with this? And this leads back into great resignation, etc. That people feel that they're somewhat misserved, and that is what we're saying is concerning. More data definitely needed in that regard. But the disillusion there is we talk to people, even at university, young people, a lot of them are master's students, they're working at students, and they've gone into entry-level positions and major chances, etc. And they're not at the level that they thought they would be. They're not progressing at the levels that they thought they were. They're returning to education, to get more skills, etc. So this is kind of, it is concerning. And it's like the statistics that you mentioned earlier, like dollars, hours, etc. And people are just becoming a little bit more disillusioned. If this is not taken note of by the relevant people, organizations, trade unions, all these bodies, this could continue to manifest itself and progress as well. So it's at this point, because we want to move towards evidence-based management.
Yes. Not just identifying the issue at the heart of it, but also then, so where do we go from here? What do we do with this minefield of data, right? So I love the fact that we highlighted, and you've actually coined this term, the disillusionment, and I think it speaks fundamentally to the meaning of what work is today in 2025, and honestly where we're going forward for the next 50 years of our lives, etc., especially for those who may just be starting out when it comes to their professional careers. Where do they picture themselves? Very different from somebody in maybe the 70s or even the 90s. Yeah, definitely, yeah. Okay, so Hazel, and from there I'd like to actually dig deeper, because also in light of the fact that tomorrow is International Women's Day, 8th of March 2025. At the same time, the entire month is centered around a lot of conversations, positive as well as insightful, that focus on women. And never more than the fact that women, of course, are an increasing proportion of our workforce. So let's talk about what are some of the gender-related findings that came out from this report.
Super interesting stuff, actually. especially being female, right? It means so much to me when I look at this data. So when we look at the experience of the exact same job between a male counterpart and a female counterpart, so the biggest variance between two people in the exact same job would be, number one, my health, overall health and well-being would be 6% lower than my male counterpart. That's number one, immediately. Okay, after that. And when we ask people this, women who looked at their findings, they said, yeah lah, because every time we do work, we take on more stress, we take on more of the demands and the details. And we feel badly for the men, and we immediately want to step in and help them. So we take on more demands, we take on more details. So that's one part of it.
Okay, but what I'm actually hearing there is weaponized incompetence.
Wow, what?
Within the workspace, right?
Because, weaponized incompetence.
Yes, absolutely. Because when it comes to especially the gender roles and the different ways in which we are encultured and raised from the very time that we are boys and girls, it actually replicates itself in the way in which workplaces also play out. Certain detailed roles, for example, only women are seen as perhaps being adept at it, being capable of it, and over time it can become habitual. Super interesting. All right.
I think so as well, and I think as you're saying that, you also have weaponized competence. So there's some things that the other gender would be very good at, and they would use that to a major advantage as well. The second thing that we're seeing as the biggest variance between male counterparts and female counterparts is in autonomy. So therefore, because I'm taking on more of a role and wanting to help and nurture and support, I lose my independence, autonomy, and freedom. And what that means for me is then I have less time to really look after what it is that I really, really want, because I'm busy taking care of everyone else that I feel I need to help. And so, yes, it is very painful when we look at a statistic like this. However, what we do when we share this data to female colleagues and we put them all in one room and we show them this data, of course, it starts with, like, you know, the commissioning starts with anger and frustration. Like, why are our lives worse off than a male counterpart?
Right, same role possibly, and
same role and all of that stuff. At the same time, you cannot outsource, even as women, no matter how much of policy and practice and whatever that we put into place.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think one of the best things that has happened through a lot of our evidence-based conversations, when we ask them, they say, you know what, Hito, no matter what companies do for us, we need to identify the women who have figured it out in male-dominated countries or circumstances.
Or industries,
or industries, or even the same role as, you know, that we have right now. Who would have figured out? And so when we look at the data set of women who are thriving in the exact same position as them, we then ask them, what is your weapon? What is your secret to this without compromising anything else in life? So I think the question, a better question then would be, what is it that certain women who preserve their health but also succeed in male-dominated circumstances, what is it that they did that helped them to succeed without compromising their well-being? And very often the answer goes, excellent negotiating skills.
Negotiating skills,
excellent negotiating skills.
Fantastic, because I distinctly remember reading so many corporate reports, etc., that evaluated in general women in the workplace being far poorer with negotiation skills as compared to their male counterparts.
Yeah, and when we dig down a little bit deeper, I mean, I can go on for hours, so I won't go into any further detail. When we dig down a little bit deeper, the reason why we negotiate poorly is because we have 6% lower self-esteem than our male counterpart.
Right.
So it first starts with all the doubts that we have of whether we're good enough and whether we will be liked when we say what we want to say. And that in itself is the first barrier of entry or exit of our voice. Then the negotiation may or may not take place. So we sometimes silence that and just say, you know what, forget about it, let me just take it on. So that's a very, very interesting finding based out of conversations that we've had with women.
I think it's very valuable, because what we're actually being able to identify right now is looking at the structural conditions which create this sort of a maelstrom in the workplace. It is a little bit of a quiet storm, because unless you're asking those right targeted questions, you're probably not going to be able to scratch much below the surface, right?
Well said with the quiet storm. And the structural thing is really internal as well. It's not just external. I think there's
yes, correct. I wanted to actually quickly highlight an interesting statistic that, of course, came from a vast-scale study across 250 organizations in America recently, where it was actually discovered that about 76% of high-performing women reportedly received negative feedback from their managers, supervisors. Only 2% of high-performing men received the same. So it's speaking a lot about, you know, these inherent complex subconscious as well as conscious biases, which then could perhaps lead to talent frustration for those who are already doing well, but at the same time are placed under comparatively unfair pressure in comparison to their male compatriots. Yeah, interesting points. Yes, Dr. Kenny, anything to add to that?
Absolutely. It's about, like what you were saying, it's about championing the success stories, and there are huge success stories. And then, you know, a lot of experimentation has come out of the States, and even in doing performance appraisals, etc., if you put them gender blind, what you would see in the statistics that you gave, they would be completely alleviated. And it's just going to show that it's these subconscious or maybe even conscious biases that people have, that perhaps in male-dominated societies, that it's, you know, females should be seen as more humble. And we need to challenge these assumptions, because if you see, you know, all research coming out of engineering, which is now seeing a huge growth in female participation.
That's right, STEM-related professions.
Exactly. They're seeing no difference in success rates. So it's kind of going back to those types of things, as in even in recruitment, etc., that if we do things as gender blind in the screening process at the very beginning, or looking at CVs, that it is just an individual, it is a human being first and foremost, rather than it's male or female, because, you know, being male or female is not an indicator of success in literally anything.
Or even competence.
Competence, exactly, all of these things. So it's, you know, going back to possibly looking at things like that, championing success stories and challenging traditional assumptions, you know, that males are traditionally engineers, females traditionally go into perhaps the nursing profession. You know, these things definitely need to be challenged, and, you know, success stories can happen in all of them.
Absolutely, which also brings me back to the fact that this competency checking, which is a constant presence, particularly for minoritized or marginalized groups within workplaces, ultimately has a blowback effect. We'll of course dig deeper into specific age demographics, but before we move on, Hital, I'd love to actually focus a little bit on some actionable areas which organizations can take when they're paying attention to such data points, which is showing that, you know, women are doing worse off, especially when they are also in similar roles at the workplace, but generally outside of the workplace, their roles and their personal lives or their home lives are very different from their male counterparts. So how can that be addressed in a sensitized manner?
It's a really tough one over here, isn't it? It's a very, very tough, unfair, potentially unfair experience. Let me just maybe give you an example of what an organization, because we are trying to outsource, trying to get a workplace to help us figure out what to do with our personal lives. Right? When we go back home, how are you going to support that for us? And that's not an easy thing to do. We were at a town hall, a recent town hall, where the CEO spoke for close to about 90 minutes. And the only one time where everybody stood up and clapped was when the CEO mentioned that, and we will also have a nursery within the building in the next 1 year, where all employees will have access to being able to put their kids over here in the nursery, and we're hoping to have a primary school. So only one time everybody clapped, and male, female, everybody stood up and started clapping.
Okay.
Right. So that obviously is very, very important, that now it's not just that you take care of us outside when we leave the organization, but help us put this within the organization so I can see my kid. Because it's very unsafe to leave the kids around somewhere else in somebody else's hands.
Sure, given the lack of, you know, childcare infrastructure. So I'm just going to intervene over there, because ultimately I think the focus is moving quite quickly into employees themselves recognizing that it's about parental or family-friendly policies.
Absolutely.
Not just for the women in the workplace in one block, and let's not look at the men at all.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Thank you for
what
that,
was interesting, though.
I'm sorry for that, but let's just go into a very quick break, and we'll be back right after that with the rest of Niaga Spotlight and this interview focusing on optimizing workplace well-being.
Membawa visi dunia ke negeri di bawah bayu. Impian direalisasikan demi kesejahteraan rakyat. Semua itu menerusi inisiatif Hala 7 Sabah Maju Jaya yang melengkapi landscape kesejahteraan. Ikuti temu bual eksklusif AWANI Sabah Plus bersama Ketua Menteri Sabah Datuk Seri Haji Jinor Isnin 10 Mac 2025 di saluran 501 AWANI dan semua platform sosial media Astro AWANI.
Daulat Tuanku.
Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight, still with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. And today we're talking about all things optimizing workplace well-being, together with Hetal Doshi, as well as Dr. Kenny Kafaki in the studios live with me now. So let's move along into talking about some other workplace groups which are traditionally either minoritized, not paid too much of attention to, or perhaps even ignored a little bit, right? Dr. Kenny, I'd love to ask you about looking at Gen Z workers as a block. What were some interesting, maybe even unexpected insights or things which you have actually been noticing as a trajectory but were then confirmed and validated by the research findings for Gen Z workers?
Yeah, jumping straight into the data, three of the biggest data points that we had were had 20% variance over their counterparts. It was a meaning of work. Younger generation, in terms of meaning of work, they want to do something that they consider very valuable to society. It's not just, you know, chasing the almighty dollar anymore. They want to do something meaningful with their life, and that came out as huge. Other things, role clarity, and when they enter into our workforce, they just enter in as a number in a lot of cases, an employment number, and that there's an individual behind that, and what are they there actually to do? Vague, you know, job descriptions, etc., that people get. They're there to help, to assist, etc., but it's not giving them enough clarity as into what they're actually doing. And, you know, one of the worst things we can ever do is not allow somebody to win. And role clarity provides a goal for people. It provides an end point. I always go back to the analogy, you would never start a running race if you didn't know how long it was going to be.
Definitely not.
You would not do
That's
that.
so true.
And it's, you know, allowing this win. And then other things then, you know, job satisfaction. And job satisfaction is huge. They're not getting the job satisfaction because the meaning of work and role clarity are somewhat vague. And, you know, this is huge. This manifests itself across the board. But like if we even look back in traditional research, you know, there's this digital nomad view of younger employees, that they job hop, that they do all of these things. But when we go back to research, it's the exact same thing. They look for two things. They look for job security and they look for a decent wage. And those two things have, in a lot of cases, been taken away. We cannot, as you know, economies have changed, businesses have changed, we cannot afford to allow people job security anymore. And wages, unfortunately, Malaysia does have, for younger generations, lots of wage stagnation, which is leading to people, you know, brain drain, etc. We see this across the board. We see this in the nursing profession, even recently in the newspapers, all over media, that because of a nurse shortage of young people entering the nursing profession.
Sure, and not because qualifications are reducing, but because people are going to different countries, perhaps, with a different currency exchange.
Dubai,
Absolutely.
all of these places. And that is causing a problem. And the solution to it, increase their working hours, which may be a short-term solution, but it'll perpetuate the problem.
Deeply counterintuitive.
Exactly, it'll perpetuate it going forward. And it's just understanding this from, you know, young people. They're not totally different. They have the same kind of goals and aspirations that we had. This is not a generational thing. You know, people do want decent work, they want good wages, and they want some semblance of job security. And you know, that has not changed, and that will not change. As we go forward in 20 years' time, if they're having the same generational conversations, You know, I can't guarantee it, but I would predict that people would ask for, they'd look for or aspire towards the exact same things.
Absolutely. So never mind 2030, what about 2050, right? But speaking of something a little more current, and I really want to mention this because it's had a bit of a resurgence. Not a new concept actually, but something which is all the rage amongst Gen Z on TikTok, which is micro-retirement. Now this was actually something that was written about by Timothy Ferriss in his 2007 book, The 4-Hour Work Week. So basically it hinges around the fact that increasingly Gen Z, they are taking up to year-long sabbaticals from work after having worked a stretch of maybe 2 or 3 years in order to pursue their hobbies, travel, other passions, etc. So any thoughts on the revival or the resurgence or this deep interest right now, or as a way to combat burnout and stress in the workplace?
Yeah, and well, just to echo what you said there, it goes back to, you know, this micro-retirement. It goes back to wage security. So they don't see the financial, because of what we spoke about, wage stagnation, so that if they kind of project themselves through their entire career towards retirement, they don't see that they're going to have the same benefits.
So live for today or for the next year?
Well, maybe not just live for today, but, you know,
and you still have the relative youth and health to go back to work again.
Yeah, you know, live while you're still young. You know, there's nothing wrong with taking that sabbatical, that kind of micro-retirement kind of way of doing things. That's all fine. But it's just to understand, you know, going back to organizations, etc., you know, you got to give them a reason to stay. You got to give them a reason to not do that. And it goes back to, you know, meaning of work, etc., you know, making work worth it. You know, at Sunway University, we teach our HR students, you know, with the CIPD, it's about championing better work and better working lives. And a lot of them, they kind of feel a little bit alienated from this. And, you know, they're voting with their feet. Whether it's doing exactly what you said, micro-retirement, or they're job hopping, etc. You know, this is the message they're receiving. We're sending them a signal, and that's what they're receiving, and they're acting upon it. And, you know, we can get into criticism of it, etc. But, you know, to me, it's a little bit like fighting the tide, coming in and out. You're not going to win that battle.
Very true.
They have a different mentality. They have a different way of looking at it. You know, they're changing. They will change the workplace, whether we like it or not.
Sure, they've already overtaken boomers proportionally in the workplace around the world for the first time in 2025. So, Haytal, looking at different dimensions of the intersectionality of Gen Z's challenges, what are your thoughts around how, what metrics or what placements can workplaces have so that actually they are responding to the feedback that is coming out from what's going to make up a larger proportion of their workforce than ever, but at the same time looking at the specific challenges, digital fluency, there's a lot of heightened societal expectations, but also economic instability. All of this as a whole does not seem like it's an opportunity for employers or organizations, but tell me some thoughts from your space.
I think there's a huge, I don't know if I can call it a great distraction.
Okay.
Right? It's a great distraction because, yes, micro-retirement without macro work, I mean, I don't understand it. Yes, Tim Ferriss wrote the book. It's a 4-hour work week. But he designed it. It made sense for him and it worked out for him. So I would say that for all organizations out there, and I've seen so many organizations giving in to management trainees, people coming in who are new and fresh. The more you give in doesn't mean the higher the success rate. It does not mean that if you give them what they want, that they're going to give you what you need.
Or that there's traction and they're going to come back beyond 6 months.
Not at all.
Even never mind a year.
No, the whole idea that if you give them what they want equals to they will give me what I want does not exist. We were looking for a role the other day, and it's data and dashboard. 40 candidates applied. 39 of them did not last in any of the 2 to 3 organizations that they were with for more than 6 to 7 months. Right. So well-being for who really? Well-being for what? And well-being why? So I would say for any organization, yes, it might be difficult to fight the tide. Yes, they might say that this is what they want. But as an organization, you need to decide what it is that you really, really want. I think Netflix, you know, apologies if this is any compete whatsoever, but Netflix did it really well. They were very clear about what it is that they really wanted.
Okay.
And they designed the entire movement of hiring towards being able to score that goal for themselves. And interestingly, the younger generation, they sign up for boot camps, they sign up for HIT, you know, like the most torturous kind of experiences.
Sure.
We never used to do that before. So they do enjoy, I'm not saying torture, but they do enjoy hard work, they do enjoy hard labor, they do enjoy great challenge.
Different
so
perspectives,
I would say make
new
it
skills.
even harder for them. And
Right.
you know, funnel in the top 5-10% that would be able to do that, and make, you know, maybe you can't fight an ocean, but make your organization like a river. Like, make sure that your guiding principles are in that direction, and get the right people to be able to fulfill it. Less doesn't mean worse. Get less, but get great ones, and pay them super duper well, and make the others say, I wish I could join that, because that will be worth it. Effort versus reward. People will get paid so much more to be able to do a great job. Which is required, really, really required in a day and age like this as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say definitely don't get distracted by whims and fancies of those that have not found grounding or footing yet in the world, unfortunately.
And at the same time, also, it, I think, demands of organizations that they be a lot limber and much more insightful in projecting what kind of strategies they want for workplace productivity, as well as assigning people into not just teams, but also roles that are then actually maximizing the type of skill sets each person is bringing in with them. So great, quantity over quality, but also pay them really well. So I'm pretty sure Gen Z would resonate with that. So from there, moving on, Dr. Kenny, I'd like to ask you, expanding a little bit on what Hatel just mentioned, the fact that it's really difficult to find employees in general these days who have any length of tenure at organizations. So what are some ways in which organizations can better approach lending a sense of belonging and identity, and also workplace cohesion, seeing that now you're going to have a significant majority in your workplace who are less tenured workers?
Yeah, and like the stats you said at the beginning, etc., that perpetuates this. It's probably, you know, what organizations can do is to understand boomerang employment. And boomerang employment has huge benefits across the board. You know, if your employees, like Hatel said there, you know, her example, 7 months, or even that could go up to 2 years, and then back to micro-retirement, etc. But it's to open the door for those people so that they don't have to essentially leave the organization, that there's actually an opportunity to come back to the organization because they're going to do it anyway. You know, we go back to in HR, you know, you develop people so that they can leave. They're human capital, but you treat them so that they don't want to leave. But if society, etc., is suggesting, you know, micro-retirement, embrace that fact and leave the door open for these people to come back, because these experiences, they become back more worldly. They might have taken up employment elsewhere, even on a part-time basis, traveled the world. They will come back with some skills, etc. They'll come back possibly a more rounded individual, and they potentially will come back with the grass is not always greener approach, that they can be actually a source of retention for your other employees, that they have had an experience elsewhere, and that, you know, you left on good terms, people fulfilled the requirements, they came back. Because, you know, if we look at the statistics now, in terms of employment, an individual entering the labour force, you know, it's up to 17 careers, over 17 different jobs over their entire career. So job hopping, don't particularly like the word, but people are going to move. They're more transient. The world
Career
is a lot
sampling
more global.
per se.
Sorry?
Career sampling almost.
Exactly.
17 is an incredible number.
Getting,
over
you know,
just
more
one
experience
lifetime.
elsewhere. But to me, you know, that does increase human capital. Just because you have a degree or a master's in one particular area, and then you move into another area for a year, 18 months, whatever, you know, you can always leverage on those skills. But it's about maximizing the skills that an individual has for the time that you have them. And it's not to get afraid about it. They're going to leave anyway. So it's about maximizing the potential while you have it, embracing the fact that they're going to leave. Don't bring resentment into the argument, and potentially, if that was a good employee, leave the door open. That will, you know, that will benefit everyone. That will benefit.
So really getting, I think, used to the idea of talent circulation rather than feeling either that you have lost completely, people that you have invested some resources into, but seeing it as, oh, it's possible that they might just come back. So from there, Hetal, I'd actually love to perhaps touch on a dimension that may not really be covered yet for the Malaysia or even the ASEAN market. We're quite often talking so much about youth, and not without fault, Our average age demographic is around 30.5 years of age, but at the same time, we're also an aging society. And data points are actually showing that this year in 2025, we can expect upwards of 13 to even 15% of retirees re-entering the workforce. Now, these would also then technically qualify under not just the Great Retiree Return as a block, but also workers with less tenure. So what do you have as some initial ideas about how workplaces can embrace the fact that older workers, retirees, perhaps many of them even also women, now want to come back into the workforce, and integrating them instead of losing too much of sleep over Gen Z who may want to go on a career transitioning path?
Right. So super interesting. Whenever we run these conversations with organizations, we ask people, what is it that you really want? Majority of them say, I want to retire.
Okay.
Right. Now, when they hit that moment in time, that 1 year before where they have to retire or they're coming up to retirement, they start then panicking. They're saying, is this what I really want? And when they do retire, they say, what do I do with all this time and this freedom? And once they taste that freedom does not feel that sweet, that's when typically they say, take me back. Let me contribute back to the world again, because this is really what life is about. And one of the organizations that we work with has done this really well. As you grow older and beyond the 60, 65, 70 brain frame, you have something called crystallized intelligence. It's not technical knowledge that you're out for, it's wisdom. And this is just such a beautiful thing to have. When you have an older person there, they've gone through so much. And because it is not forced labor, they want to be there. They come in with so much of a nurturing experience, wisdom. They're like, you know what, if you're struggling dealing with a board meeting, let me be there, let me support, let me facilitate a better conversation. And so when they come in, they have a certain position called advisors.
Okay.
Advisors or wise women, wise men that you can go and have a chat with. So in other words, they're doing a lot of work, but they're really
filling that, I think, mentorship gap, which quite often everybody at the C-suite level is probably too busy to...
Exactly. I have no time to deal with this, but these are the people who really enjoy that experience right now. And they do a phenomenal job at it. They do a beyond phenomenal job at it. And they often do a better job than what they did in the past, just in the last year of work,
Because then they would have most likely been in those C-suite managerial roles, very, very occupied.
With a lot more time, patience, wisdom. The calling is different. Before then it was a job, now it's a calling. So the way they behave and the way they show up is incredibly different and very peaceful, really. You need that in life.
Exactly. So as we're closing out the discussion, Hetal as well as Kenny, I'd just like a couple of main takeaways. So where do we go from here now that the report is out, and what actions do you hope will be taken and replicated at the policy making level that then can benefit and cascade down to as many workplaces and sectors in Malaysia as possible?
I think you probably said a lot of it there. I think we need to embrace an evidence-based approach to this. This needs to get on to the table of decision makers. This report, Ministry of HR, Ministry of Youth and Sport, Ministry of Women and Cultural Development, all of these people. And it's to embrace what it says. This report is not criticising anyone. It's just highlighting things that are of deep concern that could, if not addressed, move in towards a crisis. And, we just published the original pilot study of this. So now we're taking the different variables. We've only talked about the statistics, but the relationship between them, and taking this over time frames to see what is actually affecting what over time. And what we have found in our initial pilot study, published in the Asia Pacific Journal of HR, is that when risk is high, psychosocial risk is high, an individual's well-being goes down. down. When their psychological safety increases, their well-being increases. And it just goes to show that these things are having an effect. And then if we break that down further by demographics, we just used in the original stage age and gender, but they were hugely significant in the difference between them. So the risk you're having, the demands you're having at work versus the resources that you have to deal with them, i.e. the risk versus the safety, these are going to become more pronounced over time. And now that we have larger data sets, etc., this is going to become exactly more important.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dr. Kenny, as well as Haytel. It's been such an insightful discussion about optimizing workplace well-being. Lots of data points, but at the same time, action needs to be taken and taken now. Well, that's all we have time for today on Niaga Spotlight. I'm Tehmina Kaoosji signing off. We'll be back again next Friday with more economic analysis and highlights. Here's to a productive week ahead.